Hello and welcome to another episode of Oh and That's a Bad Miss. With the Masters coming up, we have got a hell of a week of snooker, so let's just jump straight into it after the inevitable Reddit plug. So yeah, head over to reddit.com/r/snooker. This is the perfect time to get involved. We'll have the most people talking on the discussion threads every day. I'll upload a discussion thread and people will chat about what's going on in the matches. And yeah, it's a good way to sort of increase your enjoyment in the snooker by having a conversation about a match that's ongoing online, which is a place which struggles for snooker fans sometimes. So yeah, hop onto reddit.com/r/snooker and talk about the Masters. So here we are. It was a long winter break without any snooker, other than the Champions League, but my god, we're in for a treat with this week. We've got the 2019 Masters brought to you by Daffabet. And, I mean, if you don't know what the Masters is, where have you been? It's non-ranking, but it's an invitational to the top 16 players, and it's got such a history with it, it means so much more than the £200,000 you get for winning it, although that's quite tasty. For example, just for making it into the last 16, you get £12,500, so everyone that you watch today is going away with a nice tasty paycheck. But best of all, if you win it, you become one of an elite group to have won a Triple Crown event. Just ask Mark Allen. He won last year, he's defending it this year, and all eyes are on you when you're defending a Triple Crown event. And the BBC events, of course, all the Triple Crown ones are shown on the BBC, so you've got the increased spectators, and this being held in the historic Ali Pali. Oh, you can tell I'm excited. As I'm recording this, we are 53 minutes away from, kickoff. Doesn't work for snooker, you don't kick anything, unless you're Ronnie O'Sullivan and Ali Carter. We're 53 minutes away from the start of Mark Allen and Luca Brissell, which, I mean, Mark Allen should win that. Luca has had a pretty bad season, and the only reason he's in it is because of his one win at the World Open, I believe. I can't remember which tournament he won. It was a big one and it had a lot of prize money. But this season he's totally fallen off, and yeah, I can't expect him to win it. Later on this evening at 7 o'clock, we've got John Higgins versus Ryan Day. Higgins obviously struggling with form and his mental approach to the game. He hit a 147 at the Scottish Open, I believe it was, but still, I'd look at Ryan Day as maybe an underdog here to win that match. I've got money on Ryan Day to win it. Speaking of which, I've also got money on there to be a century in every single match throughout the tournament, which I think, seeing that they're relatively long matches, the first rounds are played over a best of 11, the quarterfinals are also best of 11, as are the semi-finals, and the final is a best of 19. So they're not huge, but 6 frames needed to win, and at this high calibre of play, surely there's got to be a century at least in every match, and that's, I think, 40 to 1 odds I got it at, so good bit of money if that does come true. What do you guys think? Do you think that'll happen? I'm hoping it does, obviously, because I could win like 800 quid. And seeing that I spent the week in Bristol, because I've had the week off work, and as a postman, I picked up a few tips over Christmas. I left for Bristol with £500 in spending money, and I've come back with a tenner. So it'd be nice to recoup some of that money, because I cannot be trusted with cash, or I'll spend it. Back to the Masters on the 14th of January, which is Monday, tomorrow. 1 o'clock, we have a belter, which is Ronnie O'Sullivan versus Stuart Bingham. O'Sullivan obviously coming in great form, as he seems to be every tournament. Stuart Bingham also in good form. I think this is a rematch. It's a rematch of a final from last year. I should have looked into that. I can't remember who that was, but a good match, I think. I think O'Sullivan will win that. I can't see Bingham beating O'Sullivan if O'Sullivan turns up in the form he has played in. And then same on that day, 14th of January at 7 o'clock, we've got Ding Junhui, very struggling for form, versus Jack Lazowski, who makes his debut at the Masters. And yeah, that's another one where you could see the underdog winning, because Ding has struggled so much for form this season, Meanwhile, Jack Lazowski has made his first few ranking finals. He's been competing relatively consistently, which is what he struggled with in the past. We shall see. We shall see. I could see it sort of being... It'll either go really tight, or I could see Jack blowing it out. I think Lazowski's, in my eyes, should beat Ding unless Ding finally turns up, because Ding has done nothing this season. On to the next day, we have at 1 o'clock Mark Williams versus Neil Robertson. Robertson, after missing the Masters a couple of years ago, has bucked up his ideas and has made it to the Masters again. Taking on Mark Williams, obviously the man who, when he missed the Masters in 2014, I believe it was, he said he was probably going to retire, and then last year went on to win the World Championships. So obviously you'd think Mark Williams probably should win this, but Neil Robertson, obviously, if he comes in form, you can't really beat him. Neil Robertson, the only man to make over 100 centuries in a single season, and if that form could return to him, he's very dangerous. At 7 o'clock that day, it's Barry Hawkins versus Shaun Murphy with... Okay, so Shaun was interesting because in the UK, but prior to the UK Championships and including the UK Championships, he really struggled this season. He was knocked out in the first round of the UK's, but then in the Scottish Open, made it to the final. So, and Barry hasn't really done anything at all this season, so Shaun should be looking at this as a chance to sort of find his form for the tournament. It seems if he gets past the first round, he does alright. So fingers crossed, as Shaun is one of my favourite snooker players. And on the 16th of January at 1 o'clock, we have Judd Trump versus Kyren Wilson, and my God, there's some history towards that. Those two have fallen out recently in the last couple of tournaments, last 6 months, 8 months. Comments on both sides, with Judd saying, I think Kyren said that Judd was inconsistent and should have won more tournaments, but then Judd pointing out that Kyren is the same age as him and Judd has won a lot more tournaments than Kyren. There's going to be a little bit of bad blood, but don't be surprised if they get to the table and you're not able to tell, unless something happens in the next couple of days leading up to it. And the final match of the first round is Mark Selby versus Stephen Maguire. Maguire has shown really great form this season. Selby hasn't. So Mark really needs a big tournament win to give him some sort of confidence coming into this season and his future in the game, because he's definitely struggled as of recent. And to see one of the best of all time have such a rough period, I heard he was having trouble with his back or his neck a few years ago, and got to wonder if that's come back and is somehow affecting his play at all. But we don't know. We'll see. That's the thing with sport. It's who turns up on the day. You can do all the thinking about it beforehand. You can look at who's in form, look at everything. You can never really tell, and that's how the bookies make their money. It's because you can never tell who's going to win. Speaking of bookies and who's going to win, snooker player Jamie Jones, if you remember a few weeks ago or last week, I mentioned that he was still being investigated as to whether or not he was match fixing. He has been cleared of match fixing, so he didn't actually do it, but he failed to report a corrupt approach. So he was approached by a fellow player. Can't remember who it was. Trying to find it in the thing. He was approached by a player to fix a match, and under World Snooker's rules, you must declare that. You must tell them who it was, what they want you to do, and Jamie Jones failed to do so. He didn't fix the match, but he failed to report the fact that someone had approached him to fix a match. And you've got to wonder how many times have people been approached to fix a match and just not said nothing. And it's difficult to find out the truth in these situations. As we know from Chow Yupeng and Yu Delu, they did fix matches. So Jamie Jones is probably like 2 or 3 levels below if we're looking at it in scales. Obviously Jamie Jones, nowhere near getting into the Masters. at one point did reach the last 16 of the World Championships. So he is a top level player, but he hasn't been punished yet. He hasn't received any ban. I think it's a later date. He'll be, I assume, probably banned for 6 months or so, fined, and then be allowed back on, which is fair. He didn't fix any matches. So yeah, that's Jamie Jones. Now I'm going to keep this episode relatively short because I think I'll probably end up uploading a few episodes this week. Just down to there being so much snooker on the telly, there tends to be a lot more controversy and talking points in the tournament than leading up to the tournament. But yeah, I'd be interested to hear what you guys think is going to happen in the coming week. Who do you expect to win? Who do you think is going to be the underdog? Because there tends to be, at least in these tournaments, one slightly lower ranked player who will make it through to the later rounds. I mean, last year, who would have predicted Kyron Wilson versus Mark Allen in the final? I'll be very interested to hear what you guys think is going to happen. So in the comments below or on Twitter at @OwenThat'sABad1, all linked in the descriptions. Send me a message, tell me what you think, and enjoy this week's snooker, and I will see you at some point during the week.